The New Tech Times, a video magazine for the electronic age. In this edition, Dragon's Lair. Will the Laserdisc and Hollywood animation save the arcades? Also, labor cable and AFL-CIO network. Later, a commentary by former UAW President Douglas Fraser, and a profile of a blind businessman who operates his computer by sound. All this and more on this edition of the New Tech Times.
The New Tech Times is brought to you through a grant from Wausau Insurance Companies. Times change. Wausau works.
Hi, I'm Nicholas Johnson. Because of your support, we're going to be back in a couple of weeks with a whole new season of the New Tech Times. Until then, we're taking this holiday to look back at some of our most popular stories, look ahead to the new technology of 1984. Now, long before 1984, when I was an FCC commissioner in Washington, a young man named Nick DiMartino tried to explain to me what portable videotape recorders and cameras would mean to television. He said it was a chance for the unheard to have their say. Now, one of the largest groups that's excluded from television is American labor. After all, networks and big corporations that advertise on television are run by management, not labor, so they naturally reflect the views of the business executives who run them. And for years, I've urged the unions to use the new technology. Well, now they're doing it with their own cable television network. And it's being run by, well, you guessed it, Nick DiMartino. Here's Gary Prope's report.
I don't think that the people that run the television thing really know who the workers are, so how would they know how to portray them?
I think we're second-class citizens as far as television. I think we're underrated as far as what the worker is all about.
There's no such thing as representation for workers on TV.
A lot of times, the way I see it, the worker is portrayed as a person with low education, whereas a lot of us have gone to college and have gone to technical schools on top of that to learn our trade.
In news programming, television simply didn't report enough. Sometimes they report inaccurately, but by and large it's an error of omission rather than commission. The only time you see a labor story is when there's a big strike that affects a lot of people.
Years ago, union people would be able to protest with nothing more than a sign. Today, union members have their own cable television network.
Then came the information revolution, the information explosion. Whatever it's called, it's coming at us fast. And the labor movement is positioning itself so that it will be a part of this, so that its voice will be heard. This will happen through the programs of something new on the labor scene. This is the Cable Line Television Network. Television for America's workers.
Cable Line is being shown in 3 major cities with large union membership: Atlanta, Pittsburgh, and Seattle. It's the nation's first news and entertainment network produced by organized labor. There are 3 programs: a nightly news show, a weekly news magazine, and a program featuring films with labor's point of view.
To admire the scene, Rosie at work on the B-19. She's never twittery, nervous or jittery. Rosie, Rosie, the ribbon.
There are 2 reasons for Cable Line: to give out information and to shift the tide of anti-unionism, which is affecting the pride workers have in themselves.
There's been a lot of media coverage about the downturn in the fortunes of the labor movement in the United States, and I think that what we've discovered in going out into the field is that exactly the opposite is true. It's certainly demoralizing when you've lost your job if you work for a steel mill that's closed down and 5,000 people are out of work in your town. It's very hard to get morale up. I think part of what we're saying is that what you started out believing is still worth believing in, and there are ideals and there are people and there are struggles that are important, and you're important too.
Cable Line is being put on publicly franchised cable systems because it's intended for all viewers. DiMartino says it gives the average person an option to balance out the programs offered from the business point of view.
There are a lot of business shows for people who own stock and are concerned about the market and the developments of the economy, but it's never shown from the point of view of the average man or woman on the line or in the office.
Cable line is still an experiment. If it goes nationwide, it could have a large political impact on the country. When the AFL-CIO endorses a political candidate, the politician could have a great deal of free publicity.
In my opinion, Reaganomics is the biggest deliberate major economic mistake, perhaps in American history.
As new technology develops, the union people hope to take advantage of it. DiMartino predicts big union meetings via satellite, eliminating the need for large labor halls. He also believes there should be a communications network for union members to cut down on travel expenses. But for now, they'll stick to television programs and use the new technology to groom labor's image.
You don't have to be a union member to see what the new technology is doing to jobs. Even thousands of middle managers are on the streets. See, top management can now generate reports without them using these desktop computers. But it's the unions that have been hit the hardest. The UAW has been one of our most progressive. It's a union whose support I was proud to have in my congressional race in 1974. Walter Reuther, he was urging competitive small cars long before gas shortages and foreign imports hit Detroit. And now Doug Fraser, former UAW president, carries on that thoughtful tradition with some comments on the impact of the new technology on labor.
Well, if there's one thing that Detroit and Michigan, for that matter, needs is diversification. You know, we're too heavily dependent upon the automobile, and there's an old cliche: if the nation's economy catches a cold, we get pneumonia. And I think we have to take whatever steps are necessary to attract new industry into the state and into the city. And certainly new tech is one of the possibilities. I happen to believe that new tech is not going to generate the massive number of jobs that everybody's claiming it will. You know, and even if it generated, as some people say, 600,000 jobs between now and the end of the decade, you know, that's only 1.5% of the total labor force. It's not an easy task. It's easy to say, you know, the problem is you need to diversify. Now, having said that, the next question is, how do you do it?
If you have story ideas or comments, send them to the New Tech Times, 821 University Avenue, Madison, Wisconsin, 53706.
Those who view the new technology as a threat are probably still in the majority in this country, and yet it can be an opportunity, offering us choices beyond our dreams. One group we've featured who's used the technology in such innovative ways is the handicapped. Here's a repeat of a profile of one such person from reporter Gary Probst.
Neil Ewers has a recording studio in the basement of his home. He tapes music and develops soundtracks for films. Neil has a good ear for music and most everything. He has to. Neil Ewers is blind. In spite of his handicap, Neil has a good business going. Plus, he keeps track of his paperwork with a computer. Now, it's easy to understand how he can mix music on tapes even though he's blind, but how can he operate a computer? He lets the machine talk to him.
I press a particular key. Here, the disk drives whir, know that they're whirring correctly or incorrectly, and know as a result of sounds that I'm doing something I should do or something I shouldn't do. And if
Neil's hearing is finely tuned. He can sometimes troubleshoot problems with a program. He's learned the logic and has memorized the keyboard. He can't depend on a video display screen.
I do a lot by sound. I don't have a lot of modern technological conveniences that allow me to hear speech synthesized output. And as a result, I'm probably better off if I were sitting here at the screen and typed some characters in and the speaker said, "Error, press return to begin program all over again." I'd simply press return to begin the program all over again and really wouldn't know a heck of a lot about what I had done to cause the error. So I have to know a great deal about the logic of the computer, how it works, and the logic of the program that I'm using. In this case, I met with success.
There's a lot of competition between recording studios in Neil's community. He needs the computer to keep tight books. It helps him to use his time wisely to produce profits.
It has allowed me to look at market research. It has allowed me to print into the computer all the various kinds of jobs that I do and decide how much money I make on them, whether my price is too low or too high relative to what other people make for the same job. You get to the point where you can program those kinds of things into the computer and ask it certain questions that are relevant to your business and to how you can maximize your profits.
The computer also gives Neil a better sense of being an independent businessman.
It's allowed me to type up the computer invoices. If somebody comes in to purchase something, I will type up a bill for them right on the spot, which until I had the computer I couldn't do. I had to wait till my wife or a secretary came and printed off the invoice and mailed it out to them. This way they get it right at the moment, and I have the satisfaction of knowing that I have done it without having to bother somebody else to get it done.
Who have you met whose intriguing use of electronics might be of interest to our viewers? Drop me a line with suggestions. You'll see the address again at the end of the program. Well, some of us love the new technology and some of us hate it, but all of us are becoming more discriminating. Companies are finding that a new and wonderful technological breakthrough is no longer a guarantee of success. You and I may just decide we don't want it. And such has been the fate so far of the video disc. This video disc contains over 50,000 frames, sort of an encyclopedia of information and pictures. One of our most popular segments was about a video disc game called Dragon's Lair. Here's that report again, produced by Barry Stoner.
Dragon's Lair, a fantasy adventure where you become a valiant knight on a quest to rescue the fair princess from the clutches of an evil dragon. You control the actions of a daring adventurer finding his way through the castle of a dark wizard who has enchanted it with treacherous monsters and obstacles.
Dragon's Lair is not a feature-length movie. It's not even a Saturday morning cartoon. Dragon's Lair is a brand new, first-in-the-block animated video game that you can play in an arcade.
It's been called by some people the jazz singer of the arcade business, which is the jazz singer was the first talkie. You know, and that's what it is. It's opened up the vision. And I believe what it probably has done is antiquated all the other arcade games. And there'll be a whole barrage now of games which will start using photographic visuals and not computer-generated visuals.
But we're getting ahead of the story. It all started with a simple game like Pong that you could play on your home TV set. One of the first video games, but not very exciting. Then along came the video arcade with flashy games that you couldn't get at home, and the race for the quarter was on. And the quarters came into the arcade to the tune of $9 billion a year. But the home video game makers wanted a bigger cut of the action, so they produced more complex games, and the fight for the quarter heated up as new home video game cartridges filed into battle.
It's hurt. There's no question about it. The first generation of home games were little line drawings, but now they're getting so involved, they're actually just as sophisticated as some of these games. You can play Centipede and Pac-Man on your home Atari systems, you know, the computer games, and it's taken a lot away.
So new games were brought in to entice video players back to the arcade. Even games based on box office smashes were brought into the battle.
They're looking for something new and different. You know, they come in here with $1. Maybe they'll spend 1 or 2 quarters in video games, maybe a quarter for soda, and a quarter for that different type of amusement. They want a variety. They can't just play the same stuff over and over. It's too much. It's just too boring.
Then along came a new piece of technology called the Laserdisc, and a man named Don Bluth who liked to tell stories with classical animation.
Why have you come?
Animation is that beautiful thing that, if it's done properly, can tell stories like no other art form can.
My son's life is in great danger.
We were approached by a company called Advanced Microcomputers. And these people were engineers, and they were trying to conceptualize a game about some kind of sword and sorcery, and they had just gotten very excited about the laser disc, and they came to us and said, would you like to animate an arcade game on the laser disc?
The Laserdisc, it uses a light beam to produce pictures on a TV screen in any order you desire at the touch of a button. Full-color motion pictures and random access of those pictures. When you put that together, you might just have a breakthrough for video arcade games, and that breakthrough is Dragon's Lair.
When you're looking at the little knight in Dragon's Lair, he gets into trouble. He may be walking up a drawbridge. The drawbridge is rotten, and so he caves in. At that moment, he's in trouble. That's the little moment in time when the game player should say, uh-oh, I need to get him out of trouble. At that point, if he pushes the sword button, the laser light will access to another scene, showing Dirk pull his sword and slay the monster and get out of the bridge and go on in the castle. So I've set up a scene which shows a threat and a scene which shows the threat resolve itself. And he's saved himself. Now, if I set up those threats and resolves every second, then I've got a very fast game, which could appeal to those teenagers in the arcade.
Like I said, I think it has the most advanced graphics I've seen in any type of game I've played before. And that in itself is just really, really addictive.
In playing the arcade games, I found that there are a lot of little sticks and dots, and, you know, the graphics are nothing to write mom about. But I thought, if we can do full-blown classical animation, and we can put a soundtrack with it, so there's sound effects, and there is a storyline. The character's not just trying to shoot things down and destroy things, but he's on a rescue mission. You know, he's trying to save something. We have music. We have, of course, all the bright colors that you see in animation. Then that's bringing the artistry of Hollywood to the engineer that programs, and the two are marrying. That's art and science getting involved together, and that's a very unusual idea. An arcade owner will pay maybe $3,900, $4,000 for an arcade game. What we've done with Dragon's Lair is that we've designed a game so that when it does deteriorate and it isn't quite as popular, he can just simply take off the laser disc and put a new laser disc on it that's a new game. Change the marquee on the front of the player, and put in a new EEPROM which holds the program, and he's ready to go again. And all of that will retail to him for under $1,000.
And when you get tired of Dragon's Lair, Don Bluth will be ready with a new animated laser game, Space Ace. and soon other companies will release their own laser arcade games. Hollywood animation and the Laserdisc have become the video arcade's latest reinforcements in the billion-dollar battle for the game player's quarter.
As is so often the case in these new tech times, the changes that come to industry today are in our homes tomorrow. Can computers help us artistically? Well, joining me this week to talk about that is artist and teacher Ted Pope. Ted, how about it? Are computers just for engineers and mathematicians?
No, I think they're very central to a lot of what's going on in art today.
Well, now, you're also an anthropologist. We both studied under Professor McAllister at the University of Texas. You've spent time in the South Pacific. Is this a new phenomenon that computers would be a part of art in our time?
No, I think art has always reflected the culture to some extent, and computers, I think, now allow us to deal with certain issues, historically substantiated, that we just can't deal with, say, in painting or in other media.
But you began with relatively conventional art, landscapes on canvas and pastels.
Yeah, it's what I knew, and it's what I stayed with until all of a sudden I think I became contemporary with myself, and I saw that those media, good though they were, couldn't deal with some things I wanted to deal with.
And one of the things you've given us recently is a whole new relationship of people to the artist, as well as the art form, called interactive art. You've brought some tapes we have here. Why don't we take a look at those right now?
Oh, look at this. Our computer. It says to press any key.
Something much.
You see this? Let's go for something
Okay,
new.
that's good.
Oh, they like that.
Oh, very nice.
What did you...
It just keeps changing.
Stop.
What did you say?
Let's
I
stop
had
that.
4.
Oh, look at that.
Before again. Oh, yes.
Oh, that's nice.
Just look at that. So.
Keep it forward.
Oh,
that's good.
that's fantastic.
There we go. Okay.
Oh. Try, Paul.
No. Why don't you try and get a big square?
Oh.
Big square.
Oh, that's
There we go.
nice.
Blue. What did you say?
Seems to like 4.
That's the end of it.
That's the end, he says, Ted, but I think that's just the beginning. Tell us what's really going on here.
Well, I agree with you. It is just the beginning, and there are a lot of things going on, but a couple of the most exciting ones are this. Just as art is developing a new media, that is, the technology is changing and fast, there's an equal change in the whole concepts being brought to bear on art, a reconceptualization going along with the new technology developing. And this is going to affect the way, say, the viewer and the art object and the audience and the artist all interact. It's like the artist won't just put something out there for you to look at, and whether you like it or not, you walk away. It's going to put something out there for you to look at and physically have the opportunity to change so that you become, in part, the artist too. It's a collaboration between, say, you and the artist.
So it changes our relationship to art as well as the art.
Right. There's no fixed, inviolable art object. It'll respond, say, to you, to your own eccentricities, your personality.
How long is it going to be before we can have this for our home computers?
It's here now. And some of the best ones, perhaps, aren't in art galleries or museums right now, but in the stores that sell video games.
Thank you, Ted.
Thank you.
Finally, some tips on telephones. You know, things are a little confusing out there for Ma Bell's old customers, what with choices of long-distance service, telephones, and soon even alternative local telephone companies. But if your monthly long-distance bill looks like mine, you might want to consider the alternatives. And here to help is our regular columnist and reviewer, Tim Onosco.
You may already know that you can save money on long-distance telephone calls by subscribing to one of the new phone services like MCI, which started the business, and Sprint. What you may not know, however, is that all phone companies aren't created equal. The long-distance companies advertise rates 20 to 50% less than AT&T's charges. This is true, but the new phone companies also bill you for an additional monthly subscriber fee of $5 or $10. If you aren't making at least $25 worth of out-of-state phone calls each month, these services probably aren't for you. If you make calls to an out-of-the-way place or small town, ask if the company serves this area. Some still don't reach the entire country. Most long-distance companies let you use your service if you're traveling in another city, a real cost advantage over AT&T. But some companies charge extra for this privilege. You'll also need a touch-tone phone line, an additional expense if you don't already have one. And in cities where the local phone company bills according to the length and distance of local calls, this is called measured service, you're also paying twice, once to the long-distance company and once to the local phone company. Consider that cost, too. And making long-distance calls this way can be difficult. You'll dial a local access number to get into the system, that's 7 digits, the number that you're calling, another 10, and your personal authorization code, which could be 7 or 8 more numbers. So it takes 24 or 25 numbers to make a single call. The quality of long-distance lines can vary wildly. Some are excellent, others are barely adequate. If you're counting on using your phone to connect to another computer, this could be a problem. Billing can also be confusing. Some of the equipment used by the companies can't tell if the person you're calling has actually answered the phone or not. So if you let it ring for 10 minutes, you might be billed for a 10-minute call. And getting credit for a wrong number can also be difficult. Don't get me wrong, the long-distance companies do offer significant savings over conventional calling. They're not for everybody, and in some cases are less convenient. But if you use your telephone for business or professional purposes, or if you just like to talk to your friends across the country, they're indispensable.
Telephones are just one of the choices the New Tech Times is going to present us. Next week will be the last of our 3-part look back on our fall season and forward to 1984. We'll have some tips on what to look for in computer software for your children. And we'll replay that popular segment about the man who's gone from Whole Earth catalogs to Whole Earth software. Join me then, won't you? For the New Tech Times staff, I'm Nicholas Johnson.
The New Tech Times has been brought to you through a grant from Wausau Insurance Companies. Times change. Wausau works.
For discount information and copies of the booklets How to Buy a Home Computer and How to Buy a Telephone, send $1 to the New Tech Times, 821 University Avenue, Madison, Wisconsin, 53706.